He responded to calls every Tuesday and Thursday for 9 years, cleaning equipment and maintaining trucks with quiet dedication. The small-town fire department knew him as Tom, a reliable volunteer who never missed training and always helped with community events. Until the night a chemical plant explosion created a hazmat crisis no civilian firefighter was trained to handle, and Tom's response revealed 16 years as a Marine Chemical Biological Incident Response Force specialist who'd handled the world's most dangerous chemical emergencies. Welcome to the Human Stories. Before we begin this incredible story of hidden expertise and life-saving courage, tell me in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe heroes serve their communities in unexpected ways, hit that subscribe button. Gunnery Sergeant Tom Bradley had been volunteering with the Millfield Fire Department for exactly 9 years, 3 months, and 12 days, every Tuesday and Thursday evening, plus weekend calls. He'd show up in his pickup truck, put on the standard issue gear, and do whatever needed doing: equipment maintenance, truck cleaning, community education events. At 44, Tom was one of the department's most reliable volunteers. Never missed training, never complained about late-night calls, and somehow always knew exactly what equipment was needed before anyone asked. Chief Morrison called him the backbone of our volunteer program. To the people of Millfield, Tom was just their dependable volunteer firefighter, a quiet man who worked construction during the day and donated his evenings to protecting the community. He lived alone, kept to himself, but always showed up when people needed help. Tom's got good instincts, the other volunteers would say. Always seems to know what to do in emergencies. What they didn't know was why Tom's equipment inspections were so thorough, why he understood hazardous materials protocols with impossible precision, or why his approach to emergency scenes seemed more systematic than typical volunteer training provided. Tom Bradley wasn't just a volunteer firefighter. From 1999 to 2015, he was Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Bradley, United States Marine Corps Chemical Biological Incident Response Force, CBIRF specialist. 5 deployments to chemical emergencies, 3 classified biological incidents. Specialized training in the world's most dangerous chemical weapons and industrial accidents. But Millfield didn't need to know that. They just needed someone who showed up when fires started and emergencies happened. That was enough for Tom. Wednesday, November 8th, started with Tom finishing a construction job and heading to the firehouse for equipment maintenance. The evening was quiet, perfect for the monthly inventory and gear inspection he'd volunteered to coordinate. At 8:47 p.m., the alarm system activated with a tone Tom had never heard in 9 years of volunteer service. Not the standard house fire or medical emergency signal. This was the hazmat alert that most small T-owned departments hope never to hear. All units respond to Millfield Chemical Processing Plant. Multiple explosions, hazardous materials release, potential civilian casualties. All departments. Level 3 hazmat protocols. Tom's military training kicked in immediately. Level 3 hazmat meant chemical release with potential for serious injury or death. Civilian firefighters weren't equipped for that level of emergency. Chief Morrison's voice came over the radio, strained with stress. All volunteers, this is beyond our training level. We're setting up perimeter and waiting for state hazmat team. Chief, Tom keyed his radio. What's the estimated arrival time for state hazmat? Tom, they're coming from 3 counties over. Maybe 45 minutes. Tom looked toward the chemical plant, visible from the firehouse, where orange smoke was rising into the night sky. 45 minutes might be too long, Chief. I'm en route to establish reconnaissance. Tom. Negative. We're not trained for chemical emergencies. Tom paused before responding, knowing his next words would change everything. Chief, actually I am. Tom arrived at the chemical plant perimeter where Chief Morrison and 3 other volunteers were maintaining safe distance from the facility. Orange smoke continued billowing from 2 buildings, and the acrid smell indicated chemical reactions still occurring. Tom, what did you mean you're trained for this? Chief Morrison asked. Tom opened his truck and pulled out equipment the other firefighters had never seen: military-grade chemical detection devices, specialized breathing apparatus, and protective gear that looked nothing like standard fire department hazmat equipment. Chief, I was Marine Corps CBIRF for 16 years, Chemical Biological Incident Response Force. This is exactly what I'm trained for. Chief Morrison stared at the advanced equipment. Tom, you never mentioned military service. Didn't seem relevant to house fires and medical calls. But this is different. Tom activated his chemical detection equipment and began systematic assessment of the emergency with professional expertise that amazed the civilian firefighters. Chief, we've got chlorine gas release from Building A, possible phosgene from Building B. Winds carrying the plume southeast, away from residential areas, but there are 3 workers unaccounted for inside the facility. Tom, how can you know all that from here? 16 years of chemical emergency response, Chief. I can identify chemical signatures by smell, color, and detection equipment. Those workers inside, they don't have 45 minutes. Chief Morrison made a decision that would save lives. Tom, what do you need? Tom's approach to the chemical emergency revealed training and experience that went far beyond civilian firefighting. He began implementing military chemical incident protocols with systematic precision. Chief, I need perimeter established at 300 meters. No one without level of protection gets closer. Set up decontamination stations here and here. Tom pointed to specific locations based on wind patterns and chemical dispersal analysis. Tom, we don't have level equipment. I do. Military surplus, maintained to spec, but I need your team to coordinate evacuation and medical support. The volunteer firefighters watched in amazement as Tom suited up in chemical protective equipment that looked like something from a military operation rather than a civilian emergency. Chief Morrison, Tom's voice came through his military-grade communications system, beginning reconnaissance of the facility. I'm looking for 3 missing workers and assessing the chemical release. As Tom approached the plant, his systematic advance revealed extensive training in chemical warfare environments. He moved with tactical awareness, constantly monitoring for secondary hazards, chemical concentrations, and structural stability. Tom, can you see inside? Chief Morrison radioed. Affirmative, to workers conscious in Building A, taking shelter in the break room. 3rd worker unconscious in Building B near the chemical release. Tom, how are you going to extract them? Same way we extracted Marines from chemical attacks in Iraq. Chief, careful, systematic, and fast. Tom's rescue of the 3 workers demonstrated expertise learned in military chemical emergencies where mistakes meant death. His approach was methodical, professional, and revealed training most civilian responders never receive. The first extraction from Building A required Tom to navigate through chlorine gas concentrations that would have been fatal to unprotected personnel. His military equipment and training allowed him to reach the 2 workers who'd taken shelter. Stay calm, Tom told the frightened workers as he fitted them with emergency breathing apparatus. I'm going to get you out of here safely. Who are you? One worker gasped. Marine Corps chemical specialist. You're going to be fine. Tom's evacuation of the 2 conscious workers revealed protocols learned in combat zones where chemical weapons created similar hazards. He moved them through carefully planned routes, avoiding areas where chemical concentrations were highest. Chief, 2 workers extracted safely, beginning approach to Building B for the unconscious worker. Tom, that building's where the worst release is happening. Roger that, Chief. I've worked in worse. The unconscious worker in Building B required advanced chemical rescue techniques that Tom had learned in military operations. The worker had been overcome by phosgene gas, a chemical weapon Tom had encountered in classified operations. Chief, 3rd worker extracted. He's unconscious but breathing. Need immediate medical transport for chemical exposure. As Tom emerged from the facility carrying the unconscious worker, the assembled firefighters realized they'd been working alongside someone whose expertise exceeded anything in civilian emergency response. As emergency medical teams treated the 3 rescued workers and state hazmat teams arrived to find the situation already controlled, Chief Morrison approached Tom with new understanding of his volunteer firefighter's background. Tom, I need to know exactly what your military background is. Tom was decontaminating his equipment with military precision while coordinating with the arriving state hazmat team, Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Bradley. Marine Corps Chemical Biological Incident Response Force, 16 years active duty. Specialized in chemical weapons attacks, industrial chemical accidents. Biological incidents. Where did you serve? Iraq, Afghanistan, classified operations I can't discuss. My unit responded to chemical emergencies around the world. The state hazmat team leader approached Tom, Sergeant Bradley. Excellent work. Your initial response and rescue operations were textbook CBIRF procedures, Chief. Morrison realized something. Tom, you've been working with our volunteer department for 9 years. Why didn't you tell us about your background? Chief, I wanted to serve the community without making military service the focus. House fires, medical calls, community events, that's normal service. Tonight was different. As the chemical plant emergency was contained and investigated, Tom's role in preventing what could have been a major disaster became clear. His immediate response, systematic rescue operations, and professional chemical assessment had saved 3 lives and prevented community exposure to deadly chemicals. The state fire marshal interviewed Tom about his response. Sergeant Bradley, civilian departments aren't typically equipped to handle level 3 chemical emergencies. How were you prepared for this? Sir, I maintain my military chemical response equipment and training after discharge. Figured small towns might need specialized capabilities someday. Your equipment and procedures exceeded most civilian hazmat teams. Where did you get military-grade detection devices, surplus channels? Sir, kept everything maintained and certified. CBIRF training doesn't disappear when you leave active duty. Chief Morrison was beginning to understand the full scope of Tom's capabilities. Tom, what other emergencies could you handle that we're not equipped for? Chief, chemical spills, biological contamination, radiological incidents, plus standard urban warfare skills that transfer to civilian emergencies, building clearing, tactical medicine, crisis coordination. The volunteer firefighters realized they'd been working alongside someone whose military background had prepared him for emergencies they couldn't imagine. Tom, volunteer firefighter Mike asked, have you been holding back on other calls? Mike, I use whatever skills the situation requires. House fires need standard firefighting. Chemical emergencies need CBIRF procedures. Same person, different toolbox. Word of Tom's military background and life-saving response spread through Millfield within days. The quiet volunteer firefighter who'd served for 9 years had revealed himself to be a decorated Marine with specialized training in the world's most dangerous emergencies. Local newspaper coverage focused on the rescue. Local volunteer firefighter revealed as elite marine chemical specialist, saves 3 lives in plant emergency. Tom avoided interviews, but Chief Morrison spoke about the impact. Tom Bradley has been protecting this community for 9 years with skills we didn't know he possessed. Last night, those skills saved lives. The 3 rescued workers visited the firehouse to thank Tom personally. Plant supervisor Jim Torres spoke for the group. Sergeant Bradley, we were told the state team was 45 minutes away. We wouldn't have survived that long, Mr. Torres. That's why we train for worst-case scenarios. Sometimes, military skills transfer to civilian emergencies. Sir, how did you know exactly what chemicals we were dealing with? 16 years of chemical warfare training teaches you to identify threats quickly and respond appropriately. Different mission, same skills. Following the chemical plant incident, the Millfield Fire Department's capabilities changed significantly. Tom's military expertise became an official asset, and his equipment supplemented the department's emergency response capabilities. Chief Morrison made Tom's specialized training part of the department's official response protocols. Tom, we need to integrate your CBIRF capabilities into our emergency planning. Chief, I can provide chemical emergency response, but we should coordinate with state and federal resources for anything beyond local incidents. Understood. But now we know we have capabilities most volunteer departments don't possess. Tom began training other volunteers in basic chemical awareness, sharing military knowledge adapted for civilian responders. The key, Tom explained during training sessions, is recognizing when you're dealing with something beyond standard firefighting and knowing when to call for specialized help. Volunteer firefighter Sarah Chen asked Tom, "What other military skills could help us?" Sarah, tactical medicine, crisis communication, multi-agency coordination, military training emphasizes systematic response to complex emergencies. The department's reputation grew as word spread about their chemical response capabilities. Other small towns began consulting with Millfield about emergency preparedness. 2 years after the chemical plant incident, Tom Bradley continues volunteering with the Millfield Fire Department. But now his role includes specialized emergency response capabilities that benefit the entire region. He's trained volunteer firefighters from 6 surrounding towns in basic chemical awareness and emergency protocols. His military equipment supplements regional hazmat capabilities, and his expertise provides consultation for industrial emergency planning. Tom, Chief Morrison reflected, "That night changed how we think about emergency preparedness. Chiefs, small towns face the same hazards as military bases: chemical spills, industrial accidents, transportation incidents. The training transfers directly." Tom never talks about classified operations, combat deployments, or the dangerous missions that forge his expertise. When community members ask about military service, he gives the same answer: "Served my time. Now I serve the community." But sometimes, late at night when chemical alarms sound or hazmat calls come in, Tom becomes Gunnery Sergeant Bradley again, using 16 years of Marine Corps training to protect civilians from the so-many chemical threats he once faced in combat zones. Tom's reputation as a military chemical specialist led to consulting opportunities with industrial facilities throughout the state, chemical plants, transportation companies, and manufacturing facilities began seeking his expertise for emergency planning and response. Training. Sergeant Bradley, the regional emergency coordinator, asked, "Would you consider providing chemical response training for first responders statewide?" "Ma'am, I can share what I know, but my primary commitment is to Millfield and the surrounding volunteer departments." "Understood, but your expertise could benefit thousands of responders." Tom developed a training program that adapted military chemical response procedures for civilian first responders. His courses became highly sought after by emergency services throughout the region. "The difference," Tom explained to a class of firefighters and paramedics, "is that military chemical response assumes worst-case scenarios. Civilian emergencies require the same systematic approach but adapted for different resources and capabilities." His training emphasized detection, protection, decontamination, and evacuation, the same CBIRF principles that had saved lives in military operations and civilian emergencies. 5 years after the chemical plant incident, Tom Bradley remains a volunteer with the Millfield Fire Department while serving as a regional consultant for chemical emergency response. His military expertise has enhanced emergency preparedness across 3 counties, training hundreds of first responders in chemical incident protocols. The Millfield Fire Department now serves as a regional resource for chemical emergencies, with Tom's military equipment and training providing capabilities that didn't exist in civilian emergency services before his involvement. Tom, Chief Morrison said during Tom's recognition ceremony, "You've transformed how we approach emergency preparedness. Your military service continues to protect communities." "Chief, that's what service means: using your skills where they're needed most, military or civilian. The mission is protecting people." Tom never sought recognition for his military background, never promoted his specialized capabilities, never used his expertise for personal gain. He simply served his community with the same dedication he'd shown in military service. The chemical plant incident proved that military veterans bring more than just experience to civilian careers. They bring specialized skills that can save lives. When communities face their worst emergencies, Tom Bradley represents thousands of veterans who continue serving through volunteer work, bringing military expertise to civilian roles that protect and serve their communities in ways most people never see. So I ask you, have you ever met a volunteer whose military background made them exceptional in civilian service? Someone whose specialized training served their community in unexpected ways? Share their story in the comments, because at the Human Stories, we believe the greatest service often happens quietly, in volunteer roles and community positions, by veterans who never stop protecting others. Subscribe if you believe military expertise enhances community service. Share if you've worked with veterans whose background made them extraordinary volunteers. And remember, next time you see a volunteer firefighter or community responder, look twice. They might be much more than they appear.